bias. The assumptions we make, the perspectives we carry, and how they shape the way we see other people and the world around us. But instead of trying to point fingers or say what's right or wrong, this space is about slowing things down, about having honest conversations, sharing real experiences, and trying to understand what lies beneath those first impressions. So whether you're here to reflect, to challenge your own perspective, or just to listen, you are welcome here. This is Beneath Bias, unveiling one story at a time.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Beneath Bias. This is Marianna speaking with Bustomi and Iraide, who's actually behind the scenes most of the time, but today she's joining us on the mic. We successfully managed to record our first live episode with Associate Professor Stig Jensen from the Center of African Studies at University of Copenhagen. This episode might sound a little bit different from what you're used to, but this is the part of the beauty of a live event, isn't it? There is energy and predictability and a real audience in the room with us today. We had an amazing discussion about greenwashing, sustainability, development, and the question of who really benefits from the so-called green transition. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you will too. The final part of the event includes a Q&A session where some of you were really brave to stand up, take the microphone and ask your questions. That part would be released as a separate episode later on. For today, enjoy. Imagine this. You go to the supermarket. You choose to buy a product that feels sustainable. It's in a paper packaging, it's green, everything in the bag says that the company promises to be responsible of helping the planet. But what if it feels sustainable on one part of the world, but on the other part creates harm? What if a green choice in the global north depends on resources extraction, land loss, environmental damage in the global south? Welcome to Beneath Bias. Today we're exploring greenwashing, the gap between what the company shows compared to what it actually does. As demand for eco-friendly products rises, because I've researched 66% of people choosing to pay more to buy a sustainable product. The demand is rising, so I think we're moving away from the ethical goal and we're going to a more of like a marketing strategy here. But who pays for a product to be green? Who becomes profitable? And what happens when sustainable branding in the West is connected to resource extraction, poor labor, or environmental damage in the global South? But let's start with our own biases. I want to ask Iraide and Bustomi that I have here, my super hosts.
Hi.
Hello.
When I say greenwashing, what is the first thing that pops to your mind?
For me, especially I'm studying sustainable energy technology at DTU right now. So I learn about sustainability. But actually, where I came from, Indonesia, we don't really care about sustainability. And in here's Copenhagen is really expensive city. So when I go to NATO, I'm just see the yellow label, not the green labels, which just mean in discount. So for me, maybe I have a bias about it. So sustainability is maybe for people who can decide it, who have an option, they can just choose, okay, because I have more money, I can go more sustainability. For me, personally, I'm a student and also I'm broke. So, and then this city is expensive. So I don't think that sustainability is option. And about the greenwashing, I think that some company try to put some label on their product to make it a green, but actually we don't know. We just seeing that the green label, but we don't see all of the world system, why and where's and how it comes to be green labels. So that's my bias.
I totally agree with you. I mean, when I think of greenwashing, I think of confusion a little bit, because I studied environmental governance and I got to learn that nothing's sustainable. What's sustainability, right? And what is greenwashing? For me, any company that says that they are sustainable, they are sort of doing greenwashing, because there's no way to be sustainable, or we maybe don't have a sharp definition of sustainability. We cannot ensure that we don't do an activity and this has harm somewhere for someone. So for me, greenwashing is everywhere. And I think it's also like the easy choice for us because you feel good when you buy ecological products, when you maybe have an electric car, which I don't have. I wish. Or when we know that our country is based on green energy, but then we never think of the bad outcomes of it or like who's paying for that, as you said before. So yeah, that's for me greenwashing.
I agree as well. I mean, I'm super biased. I also study sustainability, so I'm very much into the topic, but for that, I think I didn't know I was falling to a lot of traps that I'm not falling now. But everything that writes sustainability now, it make me Google it even more, search it even more. What is sustainability? That is the question I'm asking every day, even though I'm studying sustainability. What is sustainable? Nothing could be 100% sustainable, but why a plastic gel for the hair writes sustainable product? How did they ended up there? But for me, greenwashing is a lie of someone towards me that feels like I'm a consumer and I'm not a person. But I want to highlight also why this topic matters and why we chose to go forward with this topic, even though everyone have heard about greenwashing. Of course, it's spreading the word because everyone is affected by this. You make a choice that feels sustainable, but it's not your choice anymore because it's not sustainable. You're harming someone after all. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't know it, but it affects everyone, and I feel like we should be more aware, do our research, what it feels right to us, and not be based on labels.
Yeah, I think today's aim is to uncover a little bit this perception we have about sustainability, or like to really know what greenwashing is, even when we think we are doing something positive in the other side of the world. And that for that, Stig will help us quite a lot today, I think.
Yeah. Today we are joined by Stig Jensen, Associate Professor at the Center of African Studies, University of Copenhagen. His work focuses on climate, sustainability, environmental governance in Africa, and a lot more, comparing the global north to the global south. Welcome.
Thank you.
I want to ask you a question to put you inside our conversation so far. When you hear the word greenwashing as a specialist here today, in relation to Africa and currently sustainable policies, what is the first example, problem or pattern that comes to your mind?
The first thing coming to my mind is that when we talk about greenwashing in an African context, we are focusing very much on us in the global north and not on people in Africa, which mean that some of the things that we are saying and also what we actually are doing might actually feel good seen from our perspective, but could actually feel very bad in an African context. Mm-hmm. In particular for many what I will call marginalized people, it might actually harm them in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an example in your mind?
I think one of these things around sort of carbon offsetting is, of course, one of the area that I think is very clear. You know, many people in the global north, and actually also companies, states, are concerned about our carbon footprints because of the climate crisis. Mm-hmm. So what we want to do is actually try to help. And one of the things that we often would like to do is actually planting trees, for example, in the global in the global south, because we have this idea that they absorb carbon, and in that way, if they are planted there, then we could, for example, buy somebody to have a certificate that there will be planted some trees in Africa, and that will be very good for the climate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think, I've read about Kariba in Zimbabwe. That investors, they were buying carbon credits, which means that they will save metric ton of carbon if they're planting trees there. And a huge amount of money was raised from that, but they were reporting that the money that they were raised, it never reached the people. Maybe some of them reached the people, but most of them were held by the developers, the brokers, which comes to, I'm asking why? Why did that happen? For me, it feels unfair, but it's an opinion of one person.
Yeah, but you again, if we go back and look at these things from the global north in the interaction with the global south, in Denmark we had a very, very famous company who make windows. These might be a little bit old, these windows here, but most of the sort of the modern windows in Denmark, they are made by a company called Velux. Velux have sort of decided, because it's owned by, as a fund, so they decided at one stage that they would actually like to erase their whole sort of carbon footprint, not only for their own company, but also for the one that they bought these things from. So what they decided is that they were sort of finding out how much, emission was that, and again, how much money was that. And then they asked WWF, could you do something in order to do these things? And then they said they could do it, and they had projects in different countries, for example, Uganda, where they're doing things here. But we should be aware of if they in Uganda and other places plant trees for that, you cannot grow other crops and things like that. So what we can decide here is actually it would be really good for us if they have a lot of trees there, but it would be very bad for food security.
So what you're basically saying now is that carbon offsetting is a way for companies here to do greenwashing, maybe to feel better, but they oftentimes don't take into account the problematics that they bring in the communities, right, where they want to act. I wonder, if it is like this in every example, wouldn't it be possible, to make this a solution for carbon footprint?
I think it will be possible to make a solution here, but I think first of all, why don't we do these things in the global north instead? We don't do it because the land prices are simply too high. So it will be extremely costly to do these things here at home. So therefore we do it in other places. And again, we have this idea that, for example, in Africa, but also other places in the global south, there's a lot of available land for these things. The situation is that you would know and other people would know is actually that's not the case. There is actually a lot of competition over land, and actually there's a lot of sort of food insecurity. And these things is actually increasing food insecurity.
Could you give us example, the real example, what kind of a damage that's happened when the food security affected by this kind of plantation?
What will happen, for example, these research in Uganda have showed these things, but I've actually also seen it in other places, is specifically that somebody is sort of coming and sort of interact with the state often. And the state in Uganda and other places will often say, yes, you can have this piece of land here, without getting in dialogue with people around these things. So we also need to be aware of that in this process here, some of the key actors, the local people, they are not involved in decision making. And some of these decisions have huge impact on them. And when you mentioned, for example, Kariba, another example of that is actually many, many years ago, there was made a big sort of dam project there in order to make electricity. We all like green electricity, it's fantastic. But a huge area was flooded with this dam. Yes. And in that area, there was a lot of people. They didn't know anything about these things. They were not enrolled. They were not compensated in any ways. So we need to be aware of that the cost is very much on local people.
But that the electricity that it was produced produced for the local people, or it was transported further?
But that's also a sort of a very interesting question here. Okay. Because what we often see with these projects where we produce electricity, these large-scale projects, is that it's not produced for local people.
Okay.
But it's often produced for people in urban areas. So also when we, for example, think it's fantastic that we make windmill projects in Africa, particularly some big ones in Turkana region in Kenya, we think, wow, we're doing really good. But the problem is actually these people, the herders, these pastoralists who have lived there, they're pushed out of these areas. They don't get electricity. The electricity go to the big cities.
I was wondering that because I guess you need the place to produce the electricity, but then you also need the infrastructure, and you also need what costs to build this whole, let's say, parcel where you're going to build the electricity. Like, for instance, I once did a small research review on a case in northern Norway where the Sápmi people were forced to move because they were building windmill farms. And while the construction of these farms, they were sort of destroying the paths where the reindeers usually go. So it was not a direct impact because of the windmills, but it was an impact of the whole process of constructing it. So I think it implies like way more than we can imagine, right?
But I also think here when we often talk about these things we talk about sustainability, maybe we only look a small part of sustainability because maybe it's environmental sustainable, but it's not necessarily social sustainable or political sustainable. And I think we need to, in the future, when we do these things with what we know now, is we need a more holistic perspective on these things.
Yes.
And I think it's really, really important, if we want to do these things in the Global South, that we get in dialogue with all the important stakeholders, and in particular with local communities.
Yeah.
Because they are the ones that so far are suffering from these things. And that's not only in relation to these things what we are talking about. Now we are talking specifically about planting trees, but it could also be large-scale plantations. It could also be nature conservation. You see a lot of displacement of people. And I think we should be aware of that that's a huge cost on the individual and society with these activities.
Yeah, that is true. I also, when I am thinking about it, it feels like we are a bit selfish. Like I'm a bit selfish sometimes.
Surprise. No, okay.
Yeah, no, it's surprising when I realize this about myself and also for others. It feels like our economy, that including the sustainable aspect of the economy, like windmills, etc., they are focusing on how to increase the GPT and not how to first put the society, what will secure us an equal living. That is what we want. We want a good living on this planet. We only live once.
Yeah.
I don't care about where our GPT will reach. I just care for everyone to be equal. And it feels like we're having a development, like a sustainable development compared to 20 years ago and 30 years ago. We are somewhere better, but the inequality still remains the same for me. So,
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, we are better here. Right now we are better in Denmark, maybe we are better in Greece or in Catalonia, where I'm from. But I imagine we are not better in many other places of the world, right? I can imagine that the cost of sustainability has made other places worse off. What do you think about that?
I think it's right, and I think we need to come back also what Marianna was sort of saying, these things about, I think this whole sort of individualistic thing is a big problem. And I think actually here we can learn something also from communities in Africa and other places that thinks in a more sort of community approach on these things. And when we talk about community approach here, I think we should also expand that term to sort of say, have a more cosmopolitical approach, that we are all sort of citizens in the planet.
Yeah.
So we all need to think about, what is actually our footprint in all aspects here. And we are actually together. There's a lot of people here that I have never seen before in this room here, and the listeners that have never been in contact with, but we are all together on these things.
Yeah.
And that's what I see with my generation. We have been here in Europe in particular so keen on consuming on the individual level. I think with the younger generation, I think maybe you are more focusing on networking and being together and togetherness in general, because that's actually needed. We need to think in a completely new way. And we also need to get out of these silo approach where I think, for example, these things around carbon offsetting and things like, where you only focus on one thing. We actually want to minimize the footprints with planting some trees, But, we need to look at it in all other aspects at the same time. Because when we do that, then we find out that solution might not be the best.
Yes. I have a question. Maybe we can just back again to the involving the local people, because I'm from Indonesia. I might be biased, and so there's for example, there's some place in Indonesia that we know as the largest nickel production, and we know that nickel we're using for the electric vehicle, and the extraction of this nickel, it happened in the small islands, and they have really good natures, and then these people doesn't really care actually with the sustainability, because they live sustainability actually, and then now these people they damage it by the extraction of nickels. Maybe at the first time they get a sum of money, but it's just for the beginning. But how the government, how the use of the electric vehicle, how we including the local people, because we also know that not everyone have a better or same education like us. So how we including them? What do you think about it?
I think it's very important here to look at the whole circle around these things. Mm-hmm. And just to come back also what you sort of said earlier, these things about having an electric vehicle, we often have this idea that that's very good. Now we're doing something really good for the environment, because now we're not using fossil fuels that create all these problems. Now we use electricity, and if we get the electricity from windmill or solar panels or whatever, it'll be really good. But these batteries that are in these electric cars, they have all nickel, lithium, a lot of other things. The extraction of that is, first of all, harming the environment big time, harming the health of people big time. So, and in these places also, you were talking about Indonesia, but if I take some of these other lithium, for example, and I go to DRC, Congo, and look there, these people who live with all these rich minerals, they are so poor. They are in conflict. Their health situation is very, very bad. So I think we should be aware of that, there will be mining companies who will be interested in mining these things, employing some local people. But, the local people, again, is not benefiting from this. They have to live with the cost of that extraction, and that can actually be really, really high on the individual level, not only in short time run, but because you were not only talking about short, but actually when you have made this kind of destruction, it actually have long time implication on the water quality, on all kind of other things there. So I think it's something we really need to look into. How can we, in better ways, actually work with all these things? So again, it's not harming local people, so we can feel good buying a sort of an electric car. Yeah. And in order to look good, I just want to say, it's one area where I really look good myself. I've never had a car.
Oh, okay.
So there's also alternatives.
So there's no possible then. This is impossible to do that.
It's true. This is what I was thinking right now, is our choice is to buy something because it's sustainable. It doesn't make us sustainable. There are so many alternatives, so many much simpler alternatives than buying an electric car. I know where this battery comes from. It comes from a beautiful place in Chile where indigenous people live there very much sustainably. They want to live their life peacefully, but their land is being abused. And now I cannot get it out of my mind. I want to use public transportation because I don't want this place to be harmed. I want these people to live their life as I do here in Denmark and Sweden.
I sort of feel you. I think it's a very romantic idea, the one you have. But then sometimes I start thinking about it. Usually when I'm at night, I cannot sleep and I start and I think, okay, I'm not going to have a car or whatever because I also don't have the money. Never mind. But then I will go by public transport. But then the bus has been built somewhere and it's been using some resources. And then the clothes I'm using are built somewhere. And I try to buy secondhand. And then suddenly the secondhand clothes are also being produced somewhere. And I walk through the street, they have pavement, and I don't know, I start thinking about it, and I'm like, everything I do has such a bad impact, and I don't know how can I help. And maybe because I'm thinking individualistically, I cannot help, but how can we help? And this is a question I want to ask you as well, Stig, like, what can we do, like the people in this room or the young people, basically, what can we do to sort of reverse the situation or at least have a least impact? Can we really do something?
Yes, we can definitely do something.
Nice.
But I think the first step in doing something is not internalize the crisis. Because you're also saying that you feel bad about a lot of things. I think the first step is actually feeling good about what you're doing. Because when you're feeling good about something, you are also more happy with the decisions you take, and you actually also take much better decisions. So when you're really clear to think about these things, you think more clearly when you're in a situation of positive energy and positive mentality. And I think part of these things is actually getting information, and if you have some choices, then sort of think about, okay, I will do this choice here, and that's good. And so you build up these things here. And I think there's a lot of possibilities here. And I'm not saying that you should all buy sort of secondhand clothes all the time, but I'm actually saying if you buy quality, something that you can have for a long time, and maybe even other people could take over, then it's really, really good. So it's not all these things you buy that you throw away the next day or things like that. That's a problem. So it's something about being, aware about your own choices and try all the time in your situation to take the best decisions. And again, a lot of the best decisions might not be possible because of not only you, but other people's economic situation. But then just say, that is my situation. Like you were saying in the supermarket, it's very, very good to sort of look at buying all these organic products and things like that, but they're very expensive.
Yes.
And there I think we should fight for, in a Danish context, that, for example, organic produced products should be cheaper than conventional ones. Because the reason why it's the other way around is that our conventional agriculture here in the European Union is heavily subsidized. Yeah. So that's the reason. So we need to sort of fight for some changes so we can all... So we're not sort of thinking on, I have to buy conventional produced things here because I don't have the money. It should be the other way around. So if people really want milk, chemical milk, or whatever we want to call it, then it's okay, they pay more for that. Mm-hmm. But if they want the organ, it should be the first choice because it's also the cheapest. So it's also something about how can we as a society make incentive to people so they actually take the good decision. So therefore we need to, on the individual level, do something, but it's really important to sort of say, we as individuals, we cannot do these things alone. We need to work together on these things. We cannot take the responsibility on all these things on us. And sometimes when we take these things, it actually make us really unhappy. And that's where I see we internalize the crisis. That's not good for anybody.
Okay, that's a super nice tip, actually. I'll take it.
Yeah. Now if I go to Netto or supermarket, I will check the yellow label.
But the thing is here, when I go to some of these supermarkets, including Netto, I also often buy some of the things that are so close to running out.
Yes.
So in that way, I actually
almost expired that.
So I feel good with sort of saying, I buy this. Alternatively, it will actually be thrown out. And I think that's also another problem that we don't discuss in our part of the world. Mm-hmm. The huge waste production we're doing.
I don't want to get to that topic.
No, but we simply need to sort of work with this overconsumption and this overproduction and things like that. So I feel good, for example, when I couldn't make food for my wife tonight, so she said, could you buy one of these salads? And of course I bought some that is running out tomorrow, and I was sort of feeling good about these things, and she's also feeling good about this, and it tastes as good as the one that was actually produced today. So that's a way you can also navigate in these things.
Okay.
It's a simple thinking. I don't know how we get to the point of not thinking simple or not thinking about another person. Maybe it lives next to us, maybe it lives far away. But the food production is crazy. I did research on that. Bananas can come here from Latin America just to go to waste. No, nobody consumed it. A lot of people looked at it, but it flew here just to be thrown away. It's crazy, but I don't want to make anyone anxious about it, actually. It is a good point that we have to find our balance in our life in order to feel okay with ourselves and okay with our everyday choices, because of course we are living a life and some choices are not running from our hands, so it's okay.
That's true. I think I will take what you said about the balance, because I'm usually a extreme person. I either burn the government or I either try to buy everything sustainable. So I think it's nice to keep in mind that we do what we can. We can find, or we can choose some things we buy. We can not choose some others, but we also need to find spaces to collectivize maybe and try to do something all together without having a burnout, because this can happen as well. I guess keep it simple is a good answer for that, right?
If you stayed till the end, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as we did. We want to say thank you to Stig once more for the amazing energy he brought to the room today. Stay tuned though for part 2 with the Q&A, which will be released soon. And if you like us, please give us a rate, a review, and tell your friends about us. This has been DDRN Presents Beneath Bias, unveiling one story at a time.